Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Spoiler Spotlight, where we cover the newly revealed cards and provide new deck ideas for the upcoming formats. Let's get started with Theros, God of Passage. This is the 4th god revealed so far in Journey Into Nyx, and it's quite a good one. For just 3 mana, you get a 5/4 indestructible god, and like the other minor gods, he requires 7 devotion to become a creature, but meanwhile he does provide a nice effect, which is whenever a creature you control dies, your opponent either pays 3 life, or you get to put that creature back into your hand. So a nice source of card advantage and or damage. So I think Theros fits perfectly in an aggressive black-white deck, where you can make use of his ability to deal damage to your opponent whenever a creature dies, because most of the time that's what the opponent is gonna choose. So a card like Spiteful Return that also deals damage whenever he attacks is great. He's also great because if you get to return him to your hand, you can even bestow him. Underworld Coinsmith is another great addition to this deck because he provides 2 devotion on turn 2, and his Constellation ability will trigger often, as most of these creatures are enchantments, including Theros himself, and then in the late game you can use a second effect to finish off the opponent while you're still on a high life total. Speaking of aggressive enchantment creatures, Master of the Feast is a 5/5 flyer for just 3 mana, but as with all demons he comes with a downside. Your opponent gets to draw a card on your upkeep every turn. You could try and control his downside, but I think the best way to play him is simply by jamming him on turn 3, start attacking, and hoping your opponent doesn't come up with an answer. He might look like an obese Herald of Torment, but he will kill your opponent quite a bit faster. Some additional uncommon enchantment creatures have been revealed. Riptide Chimera is an undercosted flyer, and if you can turn its downside into an upside by playing some sort of enchantment that has an enters the battlefield effect, then you could try and build a deck around it. Star-woolen Sheep is more of a sideboard card for control decks against aggressive burn decks, and Forgeborn Oreads is a little worse than Fanatic of Mogus, but maybe there's an enchantment based deck where the Constellation will trigger often, so you would want it instead of the Fanatic. Prophetic Flamespeaker is quite a card, a 1/3 double striking trampler with another upside. Whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you may exile the top card of your library and play that card this turn. So, the fact that he has double strike means that if he deals damage to a player, he might even deal damage to a player twice, so his second ability will trigger twice, so you may cast up to 2 cards this turn. So if one of them is a land, for example, you get a free land, and maybe even a free spell if you have the lands to cast it. If you want to make sure that your Flamespeaker goes unblocked, you might want to consider cards like Madcap Skills or Iroas, God of Victory, so your opponent needs at least 2 creatures in order to block the Flamespeaker. And the nice thing about Madcap Skills is that it combines very nicely with Double Strike, as you're increasing the Flamespeaker's power, so you could deal up to 6 damage on turn 4 and get 2 triggers going. The Flamespeaker provides double devotion to red, so not only does he work well with Iroas, but he also works very well with Perforos, as the effect of Perforos to give 1 additional power to your creatures works very nicely with Double Strike. If you like giant green creatures, Hydra Broodmaster is for you, a 7/7 for just 6 mana, and if you get up to 7 mana, for example, you can Monstrosity the Hydra at instant speed to make, if you have 7 mana, 3/3 Hydra tokens. If you have 9 mana, you can make 4/4 Hydra tokens, and so on. So it gets ridiculous pretty fast. A broken card in Limited, might not see constructed play, but a cool card nonetheless. King Makar the Gold Cursed is an awesome card flavor-wise, but it's a little difficult to trigger his Inspired, as usually you will only be attacking with him on turn 5 and untapping on turn 6 to trigger the Inspired, so I would advise running a card like Springleaf Drum to tap him right away so you can untap him the following turn and trigger the Inspired to start making gold tokens. Farika, God of Affliction, is the final god to be revealed in Journey Into Nyx, and altogether the final god we'll see for a long while. It's another 3 casting cost god, which is good, and its ability: for a green and a black, you may exile target creature card from a graveyard. Its owner puts a 1/1 black and green snake enchantment creature token with Death Touch onto the battlefield. So, if you exile your opponent's creatures from their graveyard, they get the token. If you exile your own creatures, you get the token. We shouldn't overlook the fact that those snake creature tokens are also enchantment creatures, so they would trigger Eidolon of Blossoms if it's in play, so you would get to draw a card, which is awesome. And all these cards also combine nicely with Krufix's Insight, where you not only get to look for some enchantment creatures or normal enchantments, but you would also fuel your graveyard for Pharika, so you would get to make those snake tokens. Twin Flame is another card with Strive, and for each creature you target, you may put a token into play that's a copy of that creature. That token gains haste, and you exile it at the beginning of the end step. The best way to abuse Twin Flame is with cards that have enters the battlefield abilities like Fanatic of Mogis, because the token will also get that ability. It also combines nicely with Kalonian Hydra, which hasn't seen a ton of play, because if you make a token of the Hydra, then both Hydras attack, they both double each other's counters, and you get in for pretty much infinite damage. Polymorphous Rush is very similar to Twin Flame. It's also a Strive card, although its Strive cost is a little cheaper, so it's easier to target multiple creatures. It's an instant instead of a sorcery, so you can use this during your opponent's turn, and instead of making a token of a creature you control, you can choose any creature on the battlefield and transform creatures you already own into the selected creature. So this will not trigger enter the battlefield effects, so we can't really abuse those, but we can abuse it with Biovisionary, because if we have 4 creatures in play, one of them being Biovisionary, we target the Biovisionary and then choose to transform 3 of our other creatures into Biovisionary for just 7 mana, and we reach the end step without losing any Biovisionaries, then we win the game because we control 4 of them. So it's certainly a fragile combo, but I would like to see it happen. Our final card for today is Riddle of Lightning. It's a reprint from Future Sight, and it's very similar to Blast of Genius. So here you can choose target creature or player, scry 3, and then reveal the top card to deal damage to the target equal to the converted mana cost of the revealed card. So if you want to go big, go with Worldspine Worm, or the split cards from Dragon's Maze are also a pretty good option, as the converted mana cost is a sum of both halves. So that's it for today. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next episode.